Okay, now we're going to talk about operators. Operators allow you to perform different operations on variable values. Now, there's five main ones we're going to actually talk about. There's actually one extra one, actually, but we're actually not going to talk about that too much in this quarter in JavaScript. The main ones we're going to deal with are the arithmetic, the assignment, string, comparison, and logical operators. And the one that I was going to leave out is the bitwise one. We don't really use that. We're not going to use that too much this quarter, actually at all this quarter. But we'll just start in on these. Now, starting with the arithmetic operators, they're just like the ones you would see in math. Like we have our plus, we have our minus, we have our times, our multiplication. We have one called modulus, and then we have some increments and we have some decrements. Now, these all do the same things that you would think they would do in math, right? This is for addition. This one is for subtraction. This one, of course, multiplication. And, of course, for division. And for modulus, the modulus is just the same. It's the division, but it leaves a remainder. And then our plus plus and our minus minus. The plus plus and minus minus is going to increase the value of a variable by one. So you use this to increment variable value by one. And of course, this one does the exact opposite. It reduces it or decrements it by one. All right, and those are all of the arithmetic operators that we're going to be using. Now we come down here to our assignment operators. Now assignment operators is pretty much like it sounds. It's used for assigning value to a variable. We have equals in this one. We have a plus equals, and then we have a minus equals. Oops. And we have a times equals. We have a divided by equals. We have a modulus equals. And we have a times times equals. We use that one for working with exponents. So let's go through, get some quick definitions here for each one of these. All right, we have our equals, which is going to assign value. Right. And we have our plus equals, which is going to increase increase the value. Actually, for this one, instead of saying increase, let me show you to you this way. Let me show you. This is actually, these are shorthands. So our plus equals, our minus equals, times, and whatnot. These are all shorthands for writing out something different. So if we were to write this out longhand, it would actually be the same as writing out x equals x plus y, right? So let's do this so we can get some clarity. Let's create a couple of variables where x equals 5 and var y equals 5. Okay? There we go. All right, so what we're talking about here is the same as that, right? So what that's going to equal, x, it would make the value of x is going to be 10, because we're actually saying 5, which is x, plus 5, which is y. So 5 plus 5, which is 10, and that's going to be the value of x. Now, we would do this pretty much the same thing. The only difference is in the actual operator that we're using, whether we're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So of course this one would be the same as minusing, right, which would give us 0. This one here is the same as multiplying. All right, oops, just clean that up. Same as multiplying, which would make this answer 25. Here we have division, which would make this answer, of course, 1, because we are actually dividing. And then we have a modulus, which would give us a 0, because there is no remainder left over after we're dividing in this particular situation. We're not having any kind of remainder when we use the modulus of 5 mod 5. And then we have our times equals. Now the times equals is the same as like saying 5 to the power of 5, right? So it's like x to the power of y. So whatever x is, we're going to go x times y, and whatever that answer is times y times y. In this particular case, we're talking 5 to the power of 5, which is going to give us a 3125. All right, so just make these make a little more sense as we're actually typing this stuff in. All right, and one more, and then we're done with our assignment operators. The next thing we're going to actually talk about is the string operators, and this is going to be pretty quick because most of the string operators, the two string operators that we use, are going to be the same ones we've already used somewhere else. We use the plus, and the plus equals, right? And they have the same type of function, right? Because the main reason why we use string operators is to concatenate strings, or to bind different things to a string, or bind two different strings together, right? So when we're doing our plus, it just adds one string to another. And then when we're doing plus equals on a string, we're actually adding a new string value to an already existing value. So if I have a string called x and it was hello, and a string called y, which is a world, I can say x plus equals y, and it would give me hello world. So I'm going to just go ahead and add new string to an existing string. All right, so now we're going to just down to our comparison operators, and we have a few of those, right? Now these are used to check the difference between variables, right? So if something is greater than, less than, or what have, or equal to, right? Now speaking of equal to, that's our first guy, right? Our equal to is used to check if a value is on either side of the equals or is the same. So I'm saying, hey, I'm looking at variable x, and I want to make sure that x equals 5. So I would have an expression saying, hey, if x equals 5, or equals 5, because if I just use a single equals, I'm putting the value of 5 in x. But if I'm saying equals, I'm trying to see if the value that is in x is equal to this specific number, right? So we're checking if one value is equal to another. All right. Now we also have those situations where we have, 3 equals. I'll get that out there. There we go. With the 3 equals, we're actually we're doing the same thing as up here, right? But we're not just checking if the value is equal. We're also checking to see if it's the same type of data, right? So not only does it have to equal 5, but it's 5 and it's also a number, right? So it's used to check if and type, value and type is equal. Now, after our equals, we have our bang equals, or our not equals. Gotta stop hitting that shift. All right, so we use this one to say something is not equal. All right, and we have our exclamation equals, which is doing the same thing as our triple equals, because we're actually doing the same thing. We're checking not just the value, but also the type. And we of course have our greater than. We have a less than. We have a greater than or equal to. And we have a less than or equal to. And then we have a ternary or a conditional comparison operator, right? Which is just a question mark. All right, and we're going to put in some definitions. And of course, we're saying if it's less than or equal to, so we're just going to kind of speed this up. All right. And we're going to fix this here. All right. So our condition one is actually used to you actually assign this to a variable, right? So you can actually use this to assign a value to a variable based on a specific condition. So if something is true, then this is going to equal this. Otherwise, it's going to equal this other thing, right? So used to assign value of a condition to a string. To a variable if true, sorry. Then the last one we are going to actually deal with are our logical operators. Now, our logical operators, there are only three that we're going to deal with, and we've already seen one. The AND, right? And this is actually what we call a logical AND, right? And we have an OR. And we have our NOT. Right? So, and what we're actually saying is and, so something and something is true. Both sides have to be in agreement in order for it to be true. We have or, either one of the two sides can be in agreement. They can equal each other or again be in agreement, and it can be true. Or something is not, right? And we saw that up here when our comparison operators, when we're actually reversing our comparison of equals, we're saying not equal. Well, that's what that the exclamation symbol is going to be for, and that is all of our operators inside of JavaScript.